Hey guys, this is Nick with Inflatable Office, here to talk to you in this session about automations and hopefully how you can use these to make your lives a whole lot easier. Just defining quickly what an automation is, it's just some kind of action that's going to happen automatically when certain conditions or criteria are triggered. And we're using these a lot for communications with our customers, our workers and sales reps and our partners. But also you can use these to set tasks if you have CRM, change statuses on your leads. You can even use them to automatically take payments if you're using global payments. So it's just a way to really streamline your workflow, take a lot of the manual legwork out of some of the things that you need to do in your operation. And there's two parts to every automation. Here we got here by going to Settings, Automations, and Add Automation. The parts to it are first, the filter, and second, the action. If you've gotten here without knowing much about a filter, I would probably suggest stopping here and be watching our video on basic filters or learning what you can about those, because these are really essential in being able to create the automations the right way so that we're targeting the right leads and customers for these actions. It's just essential to be able to know how to effectively build a filter to create the automation. So we're going to be talking a lot about that here, and these two subjects are kind of going to overlap a lot, you'll see. The second part here is the actions. Again, the actions that we have available to us are being able to email, and that email can be directed towards a customer, sales rep, or otherwise. We can also text. You can set statuses, so we can change a status of a lead if certain conditions are met. Set a field, perhaps an optional field that might need to be set under certain conditions. Or create tasks. Those are the ones that we're going to focus on in making automations. And we'll go through some common examples of automations and also look at how you can do some really cool things to make your life easier. Before we get too far into thinking of automations that can be helpful for us in building those, a couple of places that we should probably look first to see what actions are already automatically available to us. And let's start in our email center. So hop in Settings, Email Center. And if you sort by automatic, you can see every kind of email that could be triggered automatically without having to be manually sent. And most of the behaviors of these emails are self-evident by their descriptions. For example, the top one here, anytime we set a task reminder for a worker, it's automatically going to email them that task reminder if this email is active. Automatic emails are only going to send automatically if they are active. You can quickly tell which ones are active and not by if they are red or green. And just remember, any email that's red is not going to be able to be used anywhere in your system. An automatic email that is green is already sending automatically based on the criteria that we'll get into here. And a manual email that is green is not sending automatically, but it can be used for an automation. So we'll get back into some of those. A little further explanation on the behavior of the automatic emails besides the description and when they'll send. For example, after a customer got a quote recently but hasn't booked yet, we'll have a recent quote sent. That's one that you're definitely probably going to want to have active for the customer to be reminded of their quote. Another one would be if they have a deposit due after their booking. You haven't paid yet. We need to send you a reminder that you still need to pay after you've signed a contract. It already exists. We don't need to create an automation for that. Same thing with a yearly event that we want to remind our customer to book again. That's something that we already have in here too. So let's look at how the system knows when we can send these. And for this example, let's look at a recent quote that was customer created. We have that send time here sent to 1. So what this is saying is 1 day after their quote was created, it's automatically going to be sending this email, again, if it's active. Deposit due reminder. This is saying 7 days after they booked, we'll send them this reminder that they need to pay. A yearly reminder for their past events. This is saying 30 days before they booked the previous year. So if they booked on May 1st of 2024, then we're going to send them a reminder on April 1st of 2025 that they have an upcoming yearly event. So take a look and see which of these automatic emails could be useful for you without you having to create an automation before you get too far into that. These are super useful in being able to communicate with customers on some common communications. Likewise with your alerts, these are internal alerts, so these aren't going to go out to your customers, but these alerts are here to alert you for things like when an auto booking is attempted, when a contract is signed, when something is canceled, and so forth. So these alerts are also here to work automatically when they're activated, and some of these things will save you some trouble in creating automations too. Okay, before we start building some specific examples of some automations, let's talk a little bit about the frequency setting in those automations first. This is a setting that determines how often our system checks to see if any of your automations need to run. By default, it's 15 minutes, and that's perfect for time-sensitive actions. Like, for example, if you need an automation that sends a text message to a customer the day of their event, you want that to go out as close to that time as possible, or something that changes a status. You probably want that to happen right away too. But there's some other cases where you'll want to adjust this. So imagine like you're sending a series of follow-up emails to customers. You're not going to want to send all those out in 15-minute increments if it's a duplicate action. And by the way, the frequency is kind of being set in two places. One is how often it's running, and the other part that defines the frequency is how many times it's running. So your choices in how many times it's running are going to be between 1 to 10 times per lead, or you can just run that once per customer to automations that pertain to customers. So back to some examples of maybe where you would want to vary this frequency. Again, if you're the follow-up of emails there, you don't want to spam them every 15 minutes. You might want to spread that out like every day, which would be 1,440 minutes. That's kind of a common frequency, trying to split things up every day. Or for example, if you're sending out a daily report to your team, that's something that's not going to need to run every 15 minutes. It's just going to run once per day to catch everything that falls in the filter you're sending to them. So when you're setting your automation frequency, just think about how often you need that action to occur. Is it time sensitive, or does it need to be spaced out? That's how you'll determine the right frequency and how often to send that. I'll start by showing an example of a simple status change automation and explaining first how I have these statuses set up for this demo. In this case, I have two quote statuses, one of them hot quote, one cold quote. My leads come into the hot quote status when they're generated, but I like to move them to cold quote after there's no activity or contact for a while, just so I'm not mixing those up with leads that I want to follow up on. So I've created an automation that I can send leads to cold quote status after I define them as not hot anymore. And how I've done that is just, of course, first the lead status needs to contain hot because we don't want to change statuses of anything else except for those quotes. And then I define that as last contact time over 28 days ago and last contact activity date and time over 28 days ago. So by filtering leads that have been in that status for an amount of time without contact, we can create an automation to change that to cold quote and manage our statuses and workflow a little bit better. Let's talk about a slightly more complicated example that it would involve a lead status change. So I also have this status that's called IOU. This is for my customers that I'm giving a rain check to. They weren't able to fulfill their original event date, but we're holding that for up to 6 months. And we're going to use automations to manage that correctly. So I've created first an email to remind them, or an automation to remind them when their IOU is getting close to expire. And I want this to go out at about 4 months. And the way that I've done this is by creating a filter that's going to make that send out at the correct time. That filter contains all leads that have the status of IOU and their status was changed over 120 days ago. So this means that status has been in IOU in IOU for 120 days now. So far, we've only had one filter applied to our automations. You can use multiple filters, and you can exclude things in your automation. So if you've watched the presentation on basic filters, you know I have this defines my VIP customers. We're going to exclude them and voiding this IOU. They are able to hold theirs for indefinitely. So that's why I've chosen to exclude them. And the action that I have is that I have set an email that's called reminder to redeem IOU one time per customer. And just a reminder, as you're creating these email templates, they will have to be active in order to be used in automations. And that's how we'll remind them that that is getting close to expiring. Now, when it comes time that 6 month has actually run up, we have another automation called IOU void. And again, this is including anything in another filter that's similar to the other one, but in this case, it's been 183 days now, so their time is up. We're still excluding our VIP customers. Now we have two actions that are set to this automation, one being an email that is telling them that their IOU is no longer valid. And also we're going to be changing the status now to canceled. So since we're sending an email that's telling them that their IOU is canceled, we also have this other email in our email center, a pre-existing automatic email that tells customers that their event's been canceled. And we don't want both of these to send out. So what we've done is made a restriction on this automatic email that we are not going to send this email to anybody that falls in this filter, already got a cancellation email. And what that filter is doing is capturing every lead that has the email IOU void in the email log. So they're only going to get one of those cancellation emails. A lot of times you might have an automation or a reminder set specifically for items that are being rented for a lead. Here's an example of an automation I've made for myself to remind me to charge bumper car batteries anytime I have a lead coming up within a couple of days that has bumper cars. I know I've been forgetful in the past, so I've set a task for myself to remind me to charge those 2 days in advance. Could assign this to your worker if you have those. I've done this for myself. You can see how I've created this filter. You could insert many examples here really, but rental name contains bumper set up over the next 2 days, and the status contains either confirm or contracted. And you could insert maybe cotton candy. That's to remind you to order cotton candy supplies if a cotton candy machine is being rented. Or to basically go to your customers too, to remind them to mow their grass if they have an upcoming tent installation. You could send that out 7 days before instead. A lot of times you need to send operating instructions for your rentals. So this could be a good way to trigger to send the correct email templates with those operating instructions. Perhaps they order a pretzel machine or even operating instructions for your inflatables. Those can be sent automatically, triggered by when these rentals are going out. Here's a simple example of a filter that you would use for an automation to charge your customer's card for an event. In this case, I have chosen that the lead balance due is greater than 0, so they still have a balance. And the lead status is kind of my determining factor. It contains complete, and of course they have a credit card on file. More likely this for you is going to be the event date approaching within the next X number of days there, as most of the time those charges are being taken before the event's completion. So that can be modified for you, but the automation is really simple. It's just including that filter and charging the card to the customer at that time. Just a suggestion on a best practice for this, it might be a good idea to add in a reminder on your deposit received email that that charge is going to be automatically charged whatever number of days before the event or after the event. And also having your payment reminder email template being sent out after this automation. In the case of failure of a charged card, that automatic email then would come after this attempted charge. So far, we've mostly looked at automations that just pertain to leads, which is what most of your automations are going to be. But let's take a look at an example of one that's going to be relevant to customers. In this case, I have created a automation text that's going to send out to customers, and the purpose of this is just to tell them that we've missed them. We haven't seen them we haven't heard from them for 365 days or more. We're inviting them to rent again with us and offering a comeback 10 coupon code in this text too. So we've got to create a filter of who we want to send this text message to. And we've chosen contact last contact time over 1 year ago. But we've created a little bit more complex of a filter than we have so far here too. We have an and an or here. So 2 filter groups. It has to meet this criterion, and it has to meet one of these criteria, or it does not meet one of these criterion. So we do not want this text message to go out to funeral type customers or wedding type customers, as they're not likely to rent again or receive that text message well. So that's the qualifying filter for this automation. And we can send this once per customer here. The logic in doing this per customer, of course, is that a customer can easily have a lead even within the last couple of weeks, but they'd also have leads in the past too that haven't been contacted in the last 365 days. We just want to narrow in on the customer that hasn't been contacted and not the lead itself. Hopefully seeing some of these automation examples gives you a clear picture of how frequency and behavior work, and most importantly, how to use the filters to pinpoint the right targets. Some of these examples might apply to your business and might not, but I hope really that they've sparked some fresh ideas for automations that do streamline your business. Remember that the key is just to think creatively about how you can automate repetitive tasks that you're doing over and over again to save time and boost efficiency. Hope that helps, and thank you all.